Hi guys, so we're going to do conditional statements, Unit 2, Lesson 2. And as you can see, a conditional statement is an if-then statement. And if you've had biology class, you know that an if-then statement is just your hypothesis and conclusion. And so an example is real simple. You could say, if it is hot, then it is summer. One thing we want to cover is that conditional statements don't necessarily have to be true. They just have to be valid. And we'll talk about the difference between true and valid in a later discussion. Hypothesis is always going to go with the word if, and a conclusion is always going to go with the word then. And so when I have you guys diagram them, basically we're going to put a thing here. We'll pick a different one. If it is cold, then it is winter. So when I have you diagram those, I'm going to have you underline it once for the hypothesis and underline it twice for the conclusion. We'll discuss these in class. We give you a chance to practice them. You can do it now if you want, but we'll definitely be doing it in class. Not only do you have to be able to identify an if-then statement, you also have to be able to write one. So we get into this and we see vertical angles share a vertex. So how do you write that statement as a conditional? Well, it would be if angles are vertical, then they share vertex. Or if you have another one about like something simple like dolphins are mammals. Well, if an animal is a dolphin, then it is a mammal. And you guys are going to get some practice writing those in class, so we're not going to overdo it here and make you write a bunch in this practice. But understand, like, you can break any sentence apart and make it a conditional statement. So if then. The other thing that you have sometimes is you have what's called a counterexample. And so it's important to be able to identify if a statement is true or false. And if it's false, find a counterexample. And so, like I told you before, they don't necessarily have to be true to be a conditional statement. So, like, number one, if a person is British, then they're European. Well, obviously, if you're British, you live in England. England is in Europe. And so, if a person is British, then they're European is a true statement. If a number is divisible by 3, then it is odd. Well, let's think of some numbers that are divisible by 3 that wouldn't be odd. 6, 12, 18. So those are all numbers that are divisible by 3, but they're not odd. So these are what we call counterexamples to the original statement. These are statements that prove the original conditional statement false. Negation is the opposite of the statement, or what we like to call the not. And so the symbol for that is as follows. So here's the most important part about what we're doing. So we have to be able to identify conditional statements. And so we know that a conditional statement is written as if and then. And for our purposes, we're going to go P to Q. And so that's our conditional. That's the first thing that we learn about when we talk about conditional statements. The other three that are important are your converse, your inverse, and your contrapositive. A converse is known as a flip. And so we're talking about you take the original statement and your original then is now your if, and your original if is now your then. Your inverse is your not. So we take the original statement and say the opposite of that. And your contrapositive is both, flip and not, where we're going to take the original statement, we're going to flip it and make it negative. A conditional is contrapositive are congruent statements. So if a conditional is true, then the contrapositive is also true. And the converse and inverse of a statement are also congruent. So if the flip is true, then the not is true. This is where I'm going to end the notes. We're going to pick up here in class, and we're going to practice writing one from start to finish on our own.